My mother kicked me out at 16 to focus on her real kids. Now she's begging me to pay $100K for their college. But I called the cops and left them all speechless. I'm 33 years old. I work in upper management for a tech company, and honestly, I never thought I'd be telling this story, but here we are. What happened with my mother basically destroyed any chance of having a normal family. And the truth is, I need to get this off my chest because the last few weeks have been absolute insanity. I guess I should start at the beginning. When my mother had me at 20, which was already a disaster because my biological father, well, that guy disappeared so fast I don't even have memories of him. My mother always told me he wasn't ready to be a father, that he was too young, blah blah blah, but basically he abandoned us and that was it. I grew up alone with my mother during the first years of my life, and I'm not gonna lie, those years were hard for her. She worked 2 jobs, sometimes 3, and I spent a lot of time with my grandparents, who thank God were incredible people. But when I was like 8 years old, I was already in 3rd grade, my mother met Brian. Brian seemed like a decent guy at first. He had a stable job, he was nice to me, and my mother was happy, which was rare to see. They got married pretty fast, like in less than a year of knowing each other. And suddenly I had a stepfather. It wasn't terrible at first. You know? Brian didn't try to be my best friend or anything, but he wasn't mean to me either. He was more neutral. Like I was part of the package that came with my mother. Things changed. When I was around 12 years old, and my mother got pregnant with twins, and when I say things changed, I mean everything changed. Suddenly my mother was obsessed with these babies, with preparing the perfect nursery, with buying the best stuff. And I understood she was excited, sure, but it was like I had ceased to exist. Brian didn't help either. He was super excited to have his own kids, his real kids. And looking back, I should have seen it coming. But I was 12 years old and I didn't understand what was really happening. When the twins were born, a boy and a girl, the house transformed completely. Everything revolved around them. Every conversation was about them. Every financial decision was for them. I started to feel like just another piece of furniture in the house, like I was there but nobody really paid attention to me. My mother stopped asking me how I was doing in school. Brian never included me in family outings with the twins, and I basically raised myself from that moment on. I spent most of my time in my room or at my grandparents' house, who noticed what was happening but didn't know how to intervene without causing problems. The worst came when I was 16 years old. I was in my sophomore year of high school, getting good grades because I knew I wanted to go to college and get out of that house eventually. One day I came home from school and my mother and Brian were sitting in the living room, with those serious faces that let you know something bad is about to happen. I sat down and my mother said, "We need to talk to you about your future." I thought it was going to be a conversation about college or something like that. But no, what came out of her mouth was literally the coldest thing I've ever heard in my life. They told me they'd been thinking a lot and felt it was best for everyone if I found another place to live after turning 16. Can you believe it? My own mother was kicking me out of the house at 16 years old. When I asked them why, because obviously I was in complete shock, Brian said they needed to save money for the twins' future, for their education, for their activities, and that supporting me was an expense they could no longer afford. My mother was just sitting there nodding, like what they were saying made complete sense. I tried to reason with them, told them I only had a year and a half of high school left, that I had good grades, that I could get a job and help with expenses, but they didn't want to hear anything. Brian said something like, "We need to focus on our real kids now." And those words stayed engraved in my mind forever because they basically confirmed what I'd been feeling for years. I called my grandparents crying that same night, and they came to pick me up the next day. They didn't even let me finish the month in that house. They packed my stuff, and I left. My grandparents were furious with my mother. They had a horrible fight where my grandmother screamed at her that she was a terrible mother and that they'd raised her better than that. But my mother just kept saying she was doing what was best for her family. The irony is that I was also her family, or at least I was supposed to be, but I guess I never really was in her mind. I lived with my grandparents during the rest of high school and got a part-time job at an electronics store. It wasn't a big deal, but it helped me feel like I was contributing, and my grandparents never asked me for money, but I insisted on helping with something. I finished high school with a pretty good average, like 3.7 or 3.8. I don't remember exactly, and I applied for several scholarships for college. I didn't get enough to cover everything, so I had to take out a student loan. And my uncle, my mother's brother, was the one who helped me co-sign it, because obviously my mother wasn't going to do anything for me. College was tough, I'm not gonna lie. I worked while studying, sometimes 2 jobs, and there were nights where I slept like 4 hours because I had to finish projects or study for exams. But I was determined to get ahead, to prove to the world, and honestly to my mother too, even though she wasn't there to see it, that I could make it without her help. During all that time, I completely cut off contact with her. I didn't text her, didn't call her, didn't go to any family gathering where she'd be. My grandparents respected my decision, although I could see it hurt them to be in the middle of all that. I graduated at 22 with a degree in business administration and technology, and got a job at a startup that was beginning to grow. The salary wasn't incredible at first, but it was enough to live and pay my loan. I worked like crazy for years, climbing little by little, changing companies when it made sense, always looking for better opportunities. Like 3 months ago, I got a huge promotion to upper management at the company where I am now, with a salary that honestly, I never imagined I'd make. Like high 6 figures, and incredible benefits. And here's where the story gets interesting, or rather horrible depending on how you look at it. Turns out my uncle, the same one who helped me with the loan, mentioned my success at some family gathering. He didn't do it with bad intentions, he was proud of me and wanted to share it, but he didn't count on my mother being there listening. Apparently, she didn't know anything about my life during all these years, which makes sense because she literally never tried to contact me even once. Not even when I graduated from college, my grandparents told her, and she didn't even send a congratulations message. 2 weeks after my uncle let that information slip, I was at my house on a Sunday afternoon, relaxing after a heavy work week, when someone knocked on the door. I opened it, and there were my mother and Brian, standing on my porch like nothing. I almost had a heart attack because I hadn't seen them in more than 10 years, and my mother looked older, obviously, with more gray hair and wrinkles, and Brian had gained weight. My first reaction was to close the door in their faces, but curiosity got the better of me, so I asked them what they wanted. My mother started with a super fake speech about how she missed me and that she'd been thinking about me, but I interrupted her and told her to get straight to the point because I knew they weren't there for a happy family reunion. Brian was the one who finally told the truth. They said the twins, who are now like 21 years old, are in college and that the costs are killing them financially. Basically, they wanted me to pay for my half-sibling's education. I mean, the same kids they kicked me out of the house for when I was 16. The audacity of these people was incredible. My mother started saying things like, "You're their older brother. You have a good job now. You could help them easily." And Brian added something like, "It's the right thing to do after everything your mother did for you." I stood there processing the situation because honestly, I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I told them no, that I absolutely was not going to give them a single cent, and that they had a lot of nerve showing up after years of knowing nothing about me just because they needed money. My mother started crying, those manipulative tears that probably worked when I was a kid, but now just disgusted me. She told me she raised me alone for 8 years, that she made many sacrifices for me, that I owed her this. I responded that she decided to have me, that no child asks their parents to raise them, and that any sacrifice she made was her responsibility as a mother, not a favor she was doing me. Brian got aggressive and started saying I was selfish, that I was a bad brother, and that's where I completely lost my patience. I yelled at them that they literally kicked me out of the house as a minor to save money for their kids, that I made my own way without their help, and that now that it was convenient for them, they wanted to pretend we were family. I told them to get out of my house and never come back, and after more drama and yelling, they finally left. I thought that would be the end, but no, of course not. My mother started sending me emails, like 3 or 4 per week, with these super long lists of all the supposed sacrifices she made for me. Like if she bought me clothes when I was a kid, if she paid for my school supplies, if she took me to the doctor when I was sick, basically things any normal parent does because it's their obligation. In one of the emails, she even sent me a calculation of how much she supposedly spent on me during the first 16 years of my life, like it was an invoice I had to pay. I didn't respond to any of those emails. I just deleted them. But my mother didn't stop there. Like 2 weeks ago, she showed up at my office. I don't know how she knew exactly where I work. Probably my uncle told her without meaning to, or she researched it on the internet. But the point is, she showed up there demanding to talk to me. The receptionist called me all confused, saying there was a lady who said she was my mother, and I went down because I didn't want to make a scene at my workplace. I told her to leave, that this was harassment, and she started yelling in the lobby that I was an ungrateful son, that I had abandoned my family. I had to call security to escort her out of the building, and it was super embarrassing because several of my colleagues saw everything. The straw that broke the camels. Back was 3 days ago. I got home after work and my mother was waiting outside, and when she saw me, she came running and started yelling at me again. I told her that if she didn't leave, I was going to call the police, and she literally lost control and pushed me. Scratched my face. She was like possessed. My neighbors came out because they heard the commotion, and one of them called the police. When they arrived, I had to explain the whole situation, and I decided to press charges for assault. I also applied for a restraining order because this was already too much. The drama that followed was incredible. Brian called my grandparents, blaming me for destroying my mother, telling them she was devastated and that it was all my fault. My grandparents told him she'd brought this on herself, that she couldn't throw her son out on the street and then expect him to help her years later. Apparently, Brian took the twins to his parents' house because the situation was too tense, and my grandparents told me they cut contact with my mother too because they were tired of her behavior. Now I'm waiting for the restraining order hearing. I have to go to court next month. My mother keeps sending emails from different accounts because I blocked the original one, but my lawyer told me to save everything as evidence. The twins, curiously, sent me a message a few days ago saying they didn't know the whole story of what happened when I was 16, that my mother and Brian always told them I had left by my own decision. I briefly explained to them what happened and they haven't responded, so I don't know what to think about that. The truth is, I don't feel guilty about any of this. My mother made her decisions years ago when she decided I wasn't a priority in her life, when she kicked me out so she could focus on her real kids, as Brian said. I made myself. I worked hard, paid for my own education, built my career without help from anyone except my grandparents. And now that I'm successful, she wants to show up with her hand out, expecting me to solve her financial problems. It doesn't work that way. My grandparents tell me I did the right thing, that I don't owe my mother anything after what she did. My uncle feels bad for mentioning my job at the family gathering, but I told him it's not his fault, that sooner or later my mother would have found out somehow. The situation is sad in a certain sense because I basically don't have a mother anymore, but honestly, she stopped being my mother the day she kicked me out of the house. So it's not like I lost something I really had. What bothers me most is the hypocrisy of it all. For years, she didn't care where I was, how I was, if I had enough to eat or a safe place to sleep. She never asked if I got into college, if I graduated, if I got a job. Nothing. But now that she needs money, suddenly I'm her son again. Suddenly she remembers all the supposed sacrifices she made for me. It's pure manipulation, and I refuse to fall for it. Sometimes I think about how things would have been if she had supported me, if she had treated me like a son equal to the twins. We'd probably have a normal relationship. I'd probably be willing to help her if she really needed it. But she destroyed that possibility a long time ago, and the consequences of her actions finally caught up with her. It's not my responsibility to fix the financial mess she and Brian created, especially when that mess was partially caused by kicking me out to save money. They apparently didn't save well. My grandparents are 75 and 77 years old now, and I worry that all this stress is affecting them. They were the only ones who were there for me when I needed them most, and I hate that they have to be in the middle of this family drama. But they tell me they're proud of me, of how I got ahead despite everything. And that means more to me than anything my mother can say or do. The restraining order will probably be approved, considering there are witnesses to the assault and a police report. After that, I hope my mother finally understands she's not going to get anything from me and leaves me alone. If she doesn't, I'll have to take more serious legal measures. But I hope it doesn't come to that. I just want to get on with my life, focus on my career, on my grandparents while I still have them, and eventually build my own family, one that's different from the one I had. The other day I was organizing some papers and found an old photo of when I was like 7 years old, with my mother at the park. She looked happy in that photo, young and full of energy, and I was smiling without knowing everything that would come after. I stared at that photo for a while, wondering at what exact moment things changed, at what moment I stopped being important to her. Maybe I never really was. Maybe I was always just a burden she had to bear, until she had the option not to anymore. I don't know, and probably never will. And I guess that's okay because, at the end of the day, I achieved what I set out to do. I got ahead without her, and that's enough.